Say what I want like I'm Taylor. My kinda white like Taylor. Swear.
Taylor. We're back at Elajas Reacts. We're going to get to Edgar Allan Poe, Tormented Genius, a documentary. Now, Edgar Allan Poe is one of my favorite poets. When I used to read poetry a lot from like middle school, probably like 10th grade, really heavily in middle school, Edgar Allan Poe was one of my favorite poets. He's very eerie and so descriptive in his wording, right? And I enjoyed it thoroughly. I feel like he was very much a creative individual, and I feel like I really kind of etched a lot of my writing style when it came to how I put things together and the structure and even like early topic matter and things that I used to listen to. Like I feel like that contributed to me ended up getting into Earl Sweatshirt and Tyler the Creator just from being entrenched in Edgar Allan Poe's poems and stories like The Raven and stuff like that. So they wanted to dive in. There's some different stuff. I've never really checked out his documentary, learned too much about his life. So let's dive in. Why not? For all my posts out there, let's get down and dirty with that expeditiously. But we're going to check out this video. And if we don't like this video, you guys already know how we get down here at the Elajas React stage. If you don't know, I got to tell you. I got to inform you. If I don't like this video, trust me, it's going to get him out to the bottom, my guy. But if I like that thing, I'm not a hater. Y'all should know I'm not a hater. I love showing love if necessary. Okay, so, I got to get that thing a glit peasy. If I like that thing, though. Let's get into it, y'all. Edgar Allan Poe. Ooh-wee. Ring around the rosy. Pocket full of Edgar Allan Posies. Ooh-wee. Ashes, ashes.
There can't be many who were as original, as prolific, or who dealt with such sombre and macabre themes. But what led Poe to develop his fascination with the bleaker aspects of life? And what effect did it have on his mind? And how did he end up disoriented, incoherent, and wearing another man's clothes on Baltimore Street in 1849? Welcome to Insane History. I'm Professor Graham Yorston, and today I'm exploring the troubled life of one of the greatest and most influential writers in world literature.
I ain't gonna lie, though. I feel like he fake look like Edgar Allan. Comment down below if you think he look like Edgar Allan. you think that's like homie like cousin or something like that?
In world literature. Stay with me as I look into his difficult life, his famously crotchety personality, and his mysterious final few days.
You're watching YouTube, but did you know there's a YouTube Music app where you can listen to rare covers of your favorite artists?
I'll examine all the medical theories that have been proposed to account for his early death at the age of 4.
Homie's at a cemetery. I just peeped. I just peeped homie's in the cemetery.
I'll examine all the medical theories that have been proposed to account for his early death at the age of 40. And I'll share my views on what really happened to Edgar Allan Poe. He didn't have an easy start in life. Born in Boston in 1809 to parents who were travelling actors with little money and no stability. His father, David Poe, was from a respectable family, but he abandoned his plans to study law to join the 18-year-old Elajas Hopkins on stage when he saw her perform. They married and toured the theatres of New England for a few years, but David...
But they didn't say how old he was, though. They said how old she was. They didn't say how old he was. Clock that T.
His father, David Poe, was from a respectable family, but he abandoned his plans to study law to join the 18-year-old Elajas Hopkins on stage when he saw her.
Wait. Just run that back one time.
His father, David Poe, was from a respectable family, but he abandoned his plans to study law to join the 18-year-old...
He abandoned his plans to study law. Okay, so he might have been around the same age as her.
Elajas Hopkins on stage when he saw her perform. They married and toured the theatres of New England.
Interesting.
For a few years, but David was a cantankerous drinker who walked out on his wife and 2 sons when Edgar was
cantankerous. I gotta look that word up. Like me personally, I love when I don't know a word. Like I'm gonna just look that thing up. Like I love learning the words. Words is actually cantankerous. Like, come on, guys. I know even people that's watching this video, y'all should feel me. Like when you hear a word you never heard before, you like, nah, what is that? Because now, in order for me to fully entrench that into my diction, into my dialogue, and into my vernacular, I gotta just start randomly using that. Cantankerous. Cantankerous means having a difficult and contrary disposition, or being stubbornly obstructive and unwilling to cooperate. I mean, I probably could put that up context clues. Cantankerous. You're being real difficult, man. So when a shorty being annoying and get on my nerves, I'm like, yo, you being mad cantankerous. Hold on. All right, let me get it right. You being mad cantankerous right now. You getting me tight. You being mad argumentative and uncooperative. So when I tell you that I want to go bowling and you say you want to go to the mall, I'm like, yo, we went to the mall last week. Stop being cantankerous.
But David was a cantankerous drinker who walked out on his wife and 2 sons when Edgar was only 9 months old. Eliza had to carry on touring and performing if she wanted food on the table. Her 3rd child, a daughter, was born months after her husband disappeared, and she had to rely on friends and fellow actors to look after the children. In 1811, she moved the family to Richmond, Virginia, but her health was failing and she began coughing out blood. In November, the theatre staged a benefit performance for her, but it was too late. She died a week later at the age of 24. Hers was the first of many deaths from tuberculosis that Poe experienced. The Great White Plague of tuberculosis was one of the biggest killers in the 19th century.
White Plague, wow. I didn't know there was a thing called a White Plague. Oh, snap. I didn't know there was a thing called a White Plague. I knew there was a Black Plague. So tuberculosis was the White Plague. Now, the more you know, man, you really be learning things. I ain't gonna lie, back in history class, I was not paying attention. You wanna know I ain't gonna lie, Shorty the other day asked me what was my favorite subject to study in school. I said art. I like gym class. What are you talking about?
The Great White Plague of tuberculosis was one of the biggest killers in the 19th century, taking around a quarter of the adult population. The cause of the condition wasn't understood until much later, but the long drawn-out and almost invariably fatal dance with death would have been familiar to everyone, slowly consuming the bodies of its victims, making them weaker and weaker, paler and paler, tormenting them with exhausting coughing fits, and all the while waiting for the inevitable. Having lost his mother, the 2-year-old Edgar was separated from his siblings and sent to live with the Allans. John Allan, a successful Scottish-born merchant, wasn't particularly enthusiastic, but his young and childless wife Frances was delighted with the boy, perhaps because she herself had been adopted. His foster father's ambivalence continued, and he never formally adopted his ward. The family moved to England in 1815, and Edgar was sent away to schools in John Allan's hometown of Irvine in Scotland and London. Although Edgar did well in his studies, he had few friends, and his later writings reflect haunting memories of his early school years. In 1820, with Edgar still aged only 9, the family...
Some of the kid in the back of the class nobody talked to, but that kid in the back of the class nobody talked to, you should probably be best friends with that guy. That's all I'm saying. You're not best friends, but you should at least build a rapport with the guy that's super quiet all the time. Something wrong with all of us. Don't necessarily ostracize that individual. Because I ain't gonna lie, I was definitely a quiet kid at times where, I'm still even reserved to a point where I can be in a room and not feel the need to talk to anybody, but I can admit to being off the way that everyone else is off. But I feel like I'm not weird, I'm unique. But even then, I used to get called weird at times for behavior that didn't seem like it was that of an individual that wanted to be a part of the crowd. So my son was a dark, twisted genius.
London. Although Edgar did well in his studies, he had few friends, and his later writings reflect haunting memories of his early school years. In 1820, with Edgar still aged only 9, the family moved back to Richmond. But tensions built as John Allen's business started to falter.
No, I'm sorry. At the age of 9, this is what he looked like. His hair is frying me.
The family moved back to Richmond. But tensions built as John Allen's business started to falter as a result of the global economic downturn. But the rebellious teenage Poe didn't care. He was infatuated with the mother of one of his classmates and was inspired to write one of his first poems. When she died suddenly, Poe was distraught, and for months he went nightly to the cemetery to keep a solitary vigil by her grave.
Yeah, my son fell in love with his friend's mom. Now that's mommy issues at its finest. I ain't gonna lie, like that's mommy issues to like the highest level, to the point where you fall in love with someone else's mom. Well, I mean, yes, but like your friend's mom. I'm saying, I was about to say someone is someone's mom, but like not everybody, I guess, right? But in this case, that's your friend's mom.
But the mother of one of his classmates, and was inspired to write one of his first.
Homie even said classmate. He even said friend. Like that was just kid in class. I guess there's a difference though. It's like that's like if some random guy got a girl, right? Because ultimately, right, whenever you meet a girl, she usually already has a guy she was talking to, right? Let's keep it a buck. So that's like you meeting a girl who a guy was talking to that girl prior to you getting there. But at the end of the day, if she doesn't tell you that guy exists, how would you really know, essentially? But it'd be different if, that was your friend's girl. Then maybe you wouldn't go after her. But that's just the classmate's mom. That's not even like the homie mom. If that was the homie mom, that's probably wild. I mean, either way, it's like, all right, brother, you got mommy issues for sure. You should probably work those out. But he was 9. So.
Best poems. When she died suddenly, Poe was distraught, and for months he went nightly to the cemetery to keep a solitary vigil by her grave. The following year, a wealthy uncle left the Elajas a huge estate worth around $20 million in today's money, and the family was able to move into an imposing millionaire's mansion.
Nah, that's like such a random upgrade in life. Yo, imagine you just chilling one day and then you just get $20 million. For nothing, really. Nothing. Like, man, they was poor and then they just got $20 million. What? Nah, that is a crazy turn of events. I ain't gonna lie, like, I did not expect that. The man just went from like poor as hell, now he's got $20 million. Or at least $20 million, hold on.
The following year, a wealthy uncle left the Elajas a huge estate worth around
$20 million. Okay, so it's the estate. Okay. So you didn't just get $20 million. The estate was left to him that's worth $20 million. So I guess essentially you could sell it for $20 million, or you could live there and then you can just like try to produce money while you live in this expensive estate. So.
$20 million in today's money, and the family was able to move into an imposing millionaire's mansion. Poe spent little time there, however, as he started at the University of Virginia in 1826 to study languages. Allen provided some money, but not enough to cover all his expenses, meaning that Poe had to live in poverty, even having to burn the furniture in his room to keep warm. Whether for distraction or an attempt to win the means to fund a more comfortable lifestyle, Poe turned to gambling. Predictably, it didn't go well, and he ended up $2,000 in debt, around $50,000 today. Poe turned to his foster father for help, but in vain. Allen either ignored his letters or turned them over and wrote a resounding "No" on the back.
Your barber gas works great, but it doesn't work like Wealthfront. Wealthfront keeps your investments working, optimizing them.
Abandoning the university, but not feeling particularly welcome at home, Poe tried his luck in Boston for a few weeks in the spring of 1827, sustaining himself with odd jobs as a clerk and newspaper writer. But fearful of being sent to debtor's prison, a very real possibility as Virginia was one of the last to get rid of them, Poe enlisted as a private in the army, under the false name of Edgar A. Perry. He used his last few dollars to pay for the publication of a slim volume of poetry. Only 50 copies were printed, and the book received virtually no attention and gave him no financial return. But Poe was now convinced his future lay in literature, and he turned to his miserly foster father once again for help in obtaining a discharge to allow him to follow his muse. I think you can probably guess how that one ended. Poe had no option, therefore, but to focus on the army, and he was highly thought of as an artificer, rising to the rank of Sergeant Major by the age of 20. In 1829, his foster mother passed away after years of poor health battling tuberculosis. Perhaps softened by her death, Allan finally agreed to support Poe's request to be discharged from the army in order to enroll as an officer cadet at West Point Military Academy. Poe got his discharge in April 1829, but did not rush up to West Point, spending a year living with relatives in Baltimore instead. His spirits lifted when he received a positive review by influential writer and critic John Neal, and he published a second book of poems, some new and some reprinted from his earlier collection. In July 1830, he travelled to West Point to begin his officer training. In the same year, John Allan remarried, and after further quarrelling, he finally disowned Poe as an ungrateful good-for-nothing.
Damn! Yo, I now see why this man made so much sad poetry. Yeah, his life was unfortunate. Yo, homie life was really unfortunate, bro. Like, this is just sad event after sad event after sad event after sad. Like, it's literally getting progressively worse. Like, his life is literally getting progressively worse. Damn. Yo, after another thing happened, then another thing happened, then another thing happened, then you like, damn, son. Bro. Yo, son. Bomba clots.
Poe had no intention of pursuing a military career, so got himself court-martialed and dismissed for gross neglect of duty and disobedience of orders. He headed for New York, and in 1831 he published a third volume of poems, again a mixture of old and new, financed with help from his fellow cadets at West Point, many of whom chipped in 75 cents. He then returned to Baltimore to live with his aunt, brother, and cousin. His brother Henry, who had travelled the world in the Navy and published some poetry himself, was in poor health, due at least in part to problems with alcohol, and he died in August 1831. Although Poe is one of the first Americans to have lived by writing alone, it was always a precarious existence. He lurched from crisis to crisis and never had enough to feel financially secure. In 1834, his foster father became ill, and Poe went to try and make peace, but Allan sent him packing without even seeing him. After his death, he left him not a single cent, condemning Poe to a lifelong battle with poverty.
Damn, bro. Nah, that is unfortunate, dog. Like, yo, like, just tragedy after tragedy after tragedy, like his whole life. Nah, like, what? You realize why his writing was so melancholy, for real. Like, you really realize that, damn, this man was going through it for decades. Sheesh. Wow, bruh.
Ironically, his early books now sell for a fortune when they come up for sale. Tamerlane made over $600,000 in 2009. Despite the difficulties, he continued writing, winning a $50 prize for a short story, and eventually he found a job as assistant editor at the Southern Literary Messenger in Richmond. He did a good job when he was sober, but his drinking got him fired after only a few weeks. In 1836, he married his 13-year-old cousin, Virginia Clare. He was 26.
What? Nah.
Sober, but his drinking got him fired after only a few weeks.
This man got me tripping, stumbling.
He did a good job when he was sober, but his drinking got him fired after only a few weeks. In 1836, he married his 13-year-old cousin, Virginia Clare.
That's nasty works. Yo, that's diabolical works, brother. That's diabolical worse. This man married his 13-year-old cousin. He was born in 1809, I believe. So 1836, he was 25, bruh. This man was 25. This man was 25. Married his 13-year-old cousin. Diabolical works.
In 1836, he married his 13-year-old cousin, Virginia Clem. He was 26.
I said 25, right? I was a year off. But that's still nasty works. That's nasty works.
There was disagreement over the nature of the relationship. Some biographers claim that they were more like brother and sister, and that the marriage was never consummated. But the most authoritative of these, Quinn, argues that at the time it was not particularly unusual to marry a cousin, a 13-year-old, or to call your wife Sissy. And he cites letters as evidence that Poe loved his wife with the passionate devotion of a lover. By all accounts, they were a happy couple. One of his employers said, his love for his wife was a sort of rapturous worship of the spirit of beauty. And Poe once wrote to a friend,
I see no one among the living as beautiful as my little wife.
I'm uncomfy. Yeah, I'm wild uncomfy, dog. This man married his 13-year-old cousin? I'm mad uncomfy by that. What? And it was normal to marry a 13-year-old, your 13-year-old cousin, and to call your wife Sissy? Nah, what type of freak nasty activities they had going on in the 1800s? What type of freak nasty activity they had going on in the 1800s? Homie said it was normal for some. See, they didn't put this part in the textbooks. Homie made it seem like it was normal for what's that called? Like, what's that called when you like? Nah, what's that called, bro? What's that called? I forgot the word, bro. What's it called when you marry your cousin? Yo, that's about to be a crazy search history. I'm sorry, but I gotta look it up. Oh, this is a specific word for it. A marriage between two people who are related as second cousins or closer is called a consanguineous marriage. Wow, that's a specific word. Now we just learned something new today. Wow. There's questions for this. It is legal to marry second cousins in all Yo, what's going on here, gang? Consanguine. I gotta look up how to pronounce this word. This is crazy. I had no idea that there's a whole word for this. There's a whole word for marrying your cousin. I'm appalled. Yo, bro. I'm appalled right now, bro. Consanguine. We gotta find the pronunciation for this for real.
Consanguineous.
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 Consanguineous. Consanguineous. Consanguineous. Wow. Diabolical works.
Poe once wrote to a friend,
Yo, diabolical.
I see no one among the living as beautiful as my little wife.
Diabolical works, bro.
Virginia idolized her husband, sitting close to him while he wrote, keeping his pens and manuscripts in order, and writing him little poems as well. In 1837, there was another economic downturn. Poe had been rehired by the Southern Messenger on the promise of not drinking, but his inability to stick to this and the panic lost him his job. He filled his time by writing his only novel, initially serialized for a payment of $3 a page, but completed the following year. It was not well reviewed, however, many commenting on it being too liberally stuffed with horrid circumstances of blood and battle. Another calling it a literary hoax and an impudent attempt at humbugging the public. Amazingly, given his sensitivity to negative criticism, Poe wrote to one editor to say he agreed with the review, that
it was essentially correct, and the novel a very silly book.
in the summer of 1839 he became assistant editor of Burton's Gentleman's Magazine in Philadelphia, where he published articles and stories, including The Fall of the House of Usher, as well as reviews, and he quickly established a reputation as a fearless and savage critic. He accused well-known writers of plagiarism, and disagreements with his boss and his drinking led to him being dismissed after a year. He had plans to start his own magazine, but put these on hold when offered a good salary as co-editor for Graham's magazine, even though he disliked
the contemptible pictures, fashion plates, music, and love tales
for which the magazine was known. In 1842, his young wife Virginia showed the first signs of consumption, and Poe began to drink more heavily. He left Graham's and attempted to find a new position, heading to New York, where he worked briefly at the Evening Mirror before becoming editor and then the owner of the Broadway Journal. In January 1845, his poem The Raven appeared, making him a household name overnight. Sadly, though, it didn't transform his finances, as he was paid only $9 for its publication. His scathing reviews, personal vendetta with Longfellow, and scandalous literary flirtation with poetess Frances Sargent Osgood damaged his reputation and alienated friends, and the journal folded after a year. Poe and his now ailing wife moved to a cottage in the Bronx. Whenever Virginia had a bad spell, Poe would hit the bottle, further damaging his reputation, and his writing became even darker. In 1847, his beloved Virginia passed away. This is a painting of her a few hours after her death, although I suspect...
I ain't gonna lie, man. Yeah, this man lived a dark life in just totality. Like, his whole life was just dark and depressing. Yo, like, that man was really living his raps. You know what they say, rappers don't live what they rap about? My son Edgar was living them rhymes. I ain't gonna lie, my son Edgar was living them rhymes. Like, his rhymes was real, true to life. Depression. He making me sad. I'm like, damn, son. Like, depression is all this man know. Sheesh.
...to cheeks would have been considerably less plump. Poe declared,
I shall hardly last a year longer alone.
But I'm gonna keep it a buck though. Like, the fact that everyone kept passing around him, but he was still Gucci for a while. Like, that's a whole nother thing too. That's just a whole nother thing in itself. Like, everybody in his, like, was it really meant for him to suffer for real his whole life? Like, cause bro, all his loved ones kept going. Like, damn. Was it meant for this man to suffer? Like, this man was born to suffer. That is unfortunate as hell. Like, that's unfortunate as hell. Like, bro, like, dad didn't jack him. The mom went. The wife went. 13-year-old cousin, though. But the wife went. Like, his, like, hadn't really no family, no structure. He was a drunk. Like, damn, this man's existence. The word depression.
and he wasn't far wrong. His drinking increased and his behaviour became even more erratic. He made frantic efforts to find another wife, proposing marriage to several women at the same time. In 1848, he published his essay Eureka, a 40,000-word explanation of the universe. He considered it his greatest work, rating it more important than the discovery of gravity. But it was poorly received, and debate continues as to whether it is a masterpiece or rambling nonsense. In November, in a state of abject depression, he took rather too much laudanum, although what his intentions were is unclear. Laudanum, a highly addictive mixture of opium and alcohol, was easily available and widely used as a treatment for everything from headaches to children's teething. Then things seemed to pick up. His childhood sweetheart, now a wealthy widow with a large house, accepted his marriage proposal, on the proviso that he stop drinking. He joined the Sons of Temperance movement and was abstinent for a while. but he struggled to say no on his social engagements and soon fell off the wagon. In July 1849, at the start of a speaking tour, he ended up in prison in Philadelphia for public drunkenness and suffered horrific hallucinations. A few days later, he wrote to his aunt and deceased wife's mother.
For more than 10 days, I was totally deranged, although I was not drinking one drop. And during this interval, I imagined the most horrible calamities. All was hallucination arising from an attack which I have never before experienced, an attack of mania a putu. May heaven grant that it provide a warning to me for the rest of my days. If so, I shall not regret even the most horrible, unspeakable torments that I have endured.
Shaken, he decided to head back to New York, but he became convinced that his fellow train passengers were plotting to kill him, so returned to Philadelphia and rushed to a friend's house, pleading for help to shave off his moustache so he wouldn't be recognized. Over the next few weeks, he slowly recovered, and even gave some lectures. On the 27th of September 1849, he left on a steamer bound for New York. But a week later, on the 3rd of October, he was found in a delirious state in a Baltimore gutter, in great distress and in need of immediate assistance. He was taken to the Washington University Hospital, where he died 3 days later. In periods of lucidity, he called out the name Reynolds, but he was never coherent long enough to explain what had happened to him or why he was wearing a cheap, tattered suit that was not his own. His attending physician said he made vacant converse with spectral and imaginary objects on the walls, and that his final words were, "Lord help my poor soul." But all the medical records and even his death certificate had been lost. Newspapers at the time reported Poe's death as congestion of the brain or cerebral inflammation, common euphemisms for death from disreputable causes such as alcoholism and syphilis. The actual cause of death remains unclear, and this uncertainty has fueled speculation that he succumbed to pneumonia, heart disease, diabetes, epilepsy, cholera, carbon monoxide poisoning, even rabies. One theory, dating back to the 1870s, is that he was caught up in electoral violence and died of a brain hemorrhage. Another is that he was murdered, beaten half to death and left to die by the brothers of his fiancée. Whilst it is entirely possible that he may have had syphilis affecting his brain, as this condition, known as the Great Imitator, can cause pretty much any and every symptom known to medical science.
Yo, like, that man really lived a treacherous life. Like, word to, this is unfortunate. Like, just watching this, I'm like, damn, son. How can one person go through so much misfortune? And then you feel bad for him for being a drunk and possibly passing from all these, like, different options. Like, there's apparently so many options of which how this man could have, you know what I'm saying, no longer been alive, right? But can you blame the man for being a drunk? Like, seriously, can you blame him for being a drunk with all the misfortune? That is just misfortune, 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 misfortune. A little bit of good. Misfortune. Damn! I really was watching this like, because for somebody like, I mean, you know, somebody like Tyler, the Creator, right? Dad out of his life and all that. You know, he got banned from the UK, I think, at one point, right? I don't know too much even about Tyler, the Creator's childhood and what he went through for real, for the type of music that he made early in his career, from like Goblin to Wolf and Bastard and stuff like that. You know, even Earl Sweatshirt going through certain things that he went through, just being, I think he was also like kind of like a troubled child. I don't think he had his father in his life as well, like, and stuff like that. But I may be wrong about that. But, you know, it's like the dark lyrics. And it's funny because I wouldn't say I had even the childhood that they had, to where, like, I feel like to a point though I resonated with certain just anti-normality that they were projecting in their music. But I won't necessarily say I directly correlated with like all the, you know, topic matter and stuff like that. But, you know, even like Edgar Allan Poe, like I hadn't lived nearly this much misfortune, but I truly enjoyed his poetry though, and his style of writing, how he wrote, and the vividness and, you know, storytelling and stuff like that. But damn, this man, he really lived what he rap about. He lived what he rap about, boy. R.I.P. Poe.
There is no evidence that he exhibited any of the other common features of neurosyphilis. It is also possible that he may have sustained an acute brain injury from falling over or someone assaulting him. But if this had happened in his final few days, there would more than likely have been signs of external trauma, such as bruising. Pneumonia and tuberculosis of the brain can certainly cause delirium, but both are unlikely, as Poe did not have a fever. The suggestion that he had rabies seems to be based on a comment by his doctor that Poe had difficulty swallowing water in his brief, lucid intervals before lapsing back into unconsciousness. But the hydrophobia of rabies is an early sign, and dysphagia or difficulty swallowing can occur in many conditions. The idea that he had a brain tumour seems to be based on an account by a gravedigger who was moving Poe's body to be reburied under the grand monument erected 26 years after his death. His coffin fell apart, and there was something rattling around in his skull. It has been suggested that this could have been what was left of a calcified tumour. To be honest, I quite like this theory, because its gothic creativity and dark humour is worthy of one of Poe's own stories, but medically it's highly unlikely. A tumour big enough to survive nearly 30 years in the soil would have caused some focal neurological signs in life, and none of the many doctors he consulted ever found any. Neither is there any evidence that he was ever diagnosed with diabetes, so this too can be discounted. Another suggestion is that he had a form of epilepsy known as complex partial seizures, and that these were responsible for his episodes of erratic behaviour and memory loss over the course of his life. This would not explain his final few days, and there is a much more likely explanation for his blackouts. But before I give my thoughts on what really caused Edgar Allan Poe's untimely end, I wanted to discuss briefly some of the ideas about him having a mental illness or personality disorder. The most popular theory is that he must have had bipolar, as he had periods of greater and lesser creativity in his life. However, it seems to me that bipolar disorder is being suggested as a diagnosis for just about anyone who has ever lifted a pen or picked up a paintbrush, as if creativity and bipolar disorder are synonymous.
So they trying to say that every creative is, well, like not every creative, but somebody that goes through the process of being like a writer and digging in their brain to structure written pieces is bipolar. I don't think I'm bipolar. Like, I write things. I don't think I'm bipolar. No one's ever told me, like, yo, you're mad bipolar. Like, no one's told me that for
Activity in his life. However, it seems to me that bipolar disorder is being suggested as a diagnosis for just about anyone who has ever lifted a pen or picked up a paintbrush, as if creativity and bipolar disorder are synonymous. And I don't think this is right. Variations in creativity and productivity are a normal part of the human condition, and to pathologise them without clear evidence of a disturbance of functioning associated with periods of high and low mood is a misunderstanding of the nature of mental illness.
yeah, that's asinine.
Moving on to his personality. Attempts have been made to construct a picture of this using the surviving letters of Poe himself and those of his family, schoolmates and work colleagues. Young Edgar was described as a mischievous child, playing practical jokes on classmates and teachers. He was also well known for his athletic ability, which he often flaunted, and some account make him sound a bit of a bully.
I ain't gonna lie, what is this supposed to be? like
Athletic ability, which he
what
often
sport is
flaunted,
this?
and some
What sport is this, y'all? Because I'm looking at this, I'm like, like, what sport is this supposed to be? What sport is this supposed to be, yo? What sport is this supposed to be? What sport do they do this type of stuff? What sport do they do this? What sport do they do this type of stuff in? I ain't gonna lie to you.
Count, making him sound a bit of a bully.
That's crazy.
One teacher said he had an excitable temperament with a great deal of self-esteem. This tendency to grandiosity remained consistent throughout his life, but it was rather fragile, and he would become defensive and hostile when threatened by negative comments, suggesting a rather narcissistic side to his personality. He was frequently argumentative with his foster father and often stubborn and belligerent with other men in his life, and his struggles with money made him resentful of the success of others. He was also described as chronically melancholic and had the nickname of the man who never smiles. Not surprisingly, his low mood and irritability were often made worse by his drinking and use of laudanum. There are, of course, psychoanalytic interpretations of his life. This paper describes his relationships with women. They are never human, they are not warm flesh and blood, loving, hating, or coming late to appointments. They are simply beautiful lay figures around which to hang wreaths of poetical sentiments. His emotional interest lay in himself, rather than in outer objects. He wished to be loved, rather...
Nah, he's low-key. Should I say he's spinning? They are never human. They are not warm and flesh. They are not warm flesh and blood, loving, hating, or coming late to appointments. They are simply beautiful lay figures from which to hang wreaths of poetical sentiments. His emotional interest lay in himself. So I mean, I'm interpreting as that like, yo, I don't got no time to love on no shawty. They there for me to copy me a quick little whoop-de-whoop. But I love myself. If a girl gonna mess with me, she gonna mess with me more than I like her. Now, that sentiment I can take from that, and I think that low-key is something that, men should really take into account, because I think a lot of men end up fumbling and be a loyal baddie, too, that really like them for them and wanted to show them love because they simply just found them to be that guy, and choose them and all that. But, you know what I'm saying, the interest lied in himself, and he loved on himself. You feel what I'm saying? He's like, yo, these shorties nothing but flesh and blood to lay and hug, but they don't feel no emotions. They can't love me better than I love myself. Ooh. Urban Dictionary.
than to love. There may be some truth in this interpretation about his early infatuations, but I don't think this fits with how he felt about his wife. What we are left with is that Edgar Allan Poe was a prickly personality, confident of his ability, but not so confident that he was immune to criticism and setbacks, that he was prone to melancholy and drinking, and that his drinking messed up his life, and brought about his death. I think there is clear evidence that Poe died as a consequence of his lifelong alcohol problem. Apologists point out that there are accounts of him becoming drunk on a single glass of spirits, and that he could therefore not have been an alcoholic. But there are also accounts of him losing control after a single glass and going on a bender lasting for days that would take him a week to recover from. He may not have drunk every day, and he may have had some lengthy periods of abstinence, but he continued to binge throughout his life, a pattern of drinking we now know to be at least as harmful to the brain as daily drinking, and possibly more so. When heavy drinkers suddenly stop drinking, they can develop delirium tremens, profound confusion, hallucinations, tremulousness, sweating, and cardiovascular collapse. Even today, up to 1 in 10 people die from this condition, and in the 19th century it was closer to 1 in 3. Poe himself believed that vivid hallucinations he suffered during his imprisonment and forced abstinence a few months earlier were due to alcohol. He used the phrase mania à potu in a letter to his aunt. At this time it meant one thing: delirium tremens. This has had many different names over the years, but now falls within the complex of neuropsychiatric disorders known as Wernicke's encephalopathy or Wernicke's-Korsakoff syndrome. The consequences remain the same though: irreversible brain damage or death, unless it is caught early, recognised and treated. So I don't think we need to bring in bipolar, syphilis or rabies to explain Poe's ups and downs. I think he was done for by a mixture of John Allan, his mean-spirited foster father, and John Barleycorn, the poetic name for beer used by Robert Burns, who lived just a few miles away from Allan's ancestors in Ayrshire. Why was he so fascinated with the bleaker aspects of life? Because everyone he loved died a horrible death from tuberculosis or succumbed to the Poe family curse, alcoholism. What effect did this have on his mind? Of course it tormented him, but Poe, like no one else before or since, turned his torment into words on a page, words that continue to shock, entertain, and inspire to this day. Poe himself summed it up.
I do believe God gave me a spark of genius, but he quenched it in misery.
That's it for today. Thank you for watching. Please
That was a bar.
entertain and inspire to this day. Poe himself summed it up.
I do believe God gave me a spark of genius, but he quenched it in misery.
I do believe God gave me a spark of genius, but he quenched it in misery. Damn. That's a terrible feeling. Like, yo, that really must suck. Like, that really must have sucked. Like, that thought process really must have sucked. Because he really was a genius. Reading his poetry was so entertaining, for real. It was so dark and eerie and enjoyable, though. And I wanted to keep reading it. It kept me interested. You know, like, the inner workings of this man's brain was truly intriguing to me. But learning more about his life is like, damn, like, yo, this man was very troubled. Seriously, he lived an awful life. Not funny, but damn, like, one thing I don't feel bad about is the whole 13-year-old cousin. I mean, RIP her though, but damn, like, that's like, what, 13-year-old cousin, brother? And that was normalized over there, like, around that time. Like, what's going on, y'all? What's up with the other shorties? Like, but look, like, it seems like from these pictures, a lot of them look alike. I ain't gonna, but like, why the cousin? Why did the 13-year-old cousins? Why? Why we gotta interact with the 13-year-old cousins? Why we gotta do that? We don't even gotta do all that. Like, that doesn't even have to really be done for real. You don't even have to do all that. You know what I'm saying? Type stuff. You don't even have to do all that for real.
That's it for today. Thank you for watching. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you enjoyed the video.
That was a good video, brother. I give you a like. That was Edgar Allan Poe, the troubled genius. Edgar Allan was definitely troubled. Troubled is the exact word. And unfortunate. Troubled and unfortunate is that whole man's existence living on planet Earth. Like, damn, that's unfortunate. Like, bro, it was thing after thing after thing after. Like, it kept getting worse. It literally kept getting worse. Thing after thing after thing after thing after thing after thing after thing. A little bit of good. Thing after thing after. Like, it was just like a little bit of good. A little sprinkle of good. Not even too much good. Can't have too much good in there, apparently. A little sprinkle. Like, damn. That was unfortunate. But let me give you another stamp, for another mount to the bottom for that 13-year-old cousin. All of y'all, diabolical. You know what I'm saying? But the video itself, though, great peasy, let it wiggle away. Jacking that. Y'all should definitely check out that video at your own time if you want to. Or just rewatch this reaction, because why not watch it with your boy Tay? Grab you some popcorn, throw your robe on. Shout out to Vion. Shout out to Vion for the robe. Shout out to Vion for the robe. Throw your Vion robe on, or throw your robe on, and get crunk and sit down. Let's have a good watch sesh. Good watch sesh. You know what I'm saying? Comment down below any other videos you want me to react to. That's going to do this episode of Elajas Reacts. Make sure you go and subscribe to the channel. Turn on the post notification bells every time we drop a new damn video. Make sure you follow Taylor Elajas on Instagram and TikTok for more funny and satirical content. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Taylor Elajas. You're watching Elajas Reacts. Boy.
I hate love, I don't know what to do with it. A chill guy, yeah, I'm jiggy and smooth with it. Snap back when she saw it, I'm too fitted. Surfboard in the ocean, I groove in it.